to you.
Welcome back to Doug's Urban Garden, where we try to do things in a more urban way. We've talked about composting and how compost rejuvenates the soil, aerates the soil, and puts nutrients back in the soil. So today we're going to talk about how to compost. There's many ways. The old farmers used to just pile all the vegetable material and farm waste in a big pile with some manure on top, blend it in and let it sit there and compost rot. Today, it's a whole different world. So in your garden, in your backyard, you can make a compost bin, which is either one big bin or 3 compartment bins where you move your compost and your material from one bin to the next, and on bin number 3, it's ready to go back in the soil. Or you can buy one of these tumblers. The tumblers run from $75 to $300, depend on where you buy them and how big and how fancy the container is. But here in the urban garden, we like to do things the urban way, simple, the lazy man's way. So we're going to do trench composting. So what is that? That is, you dig a trench in your garden bed. Now, these garden beds, as I said earlier, they're 4 feet wide, 8 feet long, 2 feet up off the ground. They are essentially nothing more than a raised bed, garden bed, raised, because I don't like to get down on my hands and knees and dig in the soil. And so this way, it brings the soil up to where I like to work. So let's talk about what we could put in to compost. As I said earlier, all your kitchen scraps and your yard cuttings. But there's some things you don't want to put in here. Now here in southern New Mexico, West Texas, one of the big shrubs that a lot of people use is oleanders. Hold on for a minute. Let's look at some oleander leaves. Now here, the first thing people are going to say, oleanders are poisonous. Yes, that's totally true. And the reason people put so many oleanders here in southern New Mexico, West Texas, is because once they're established, they're drought resistant and they stay green all year long, all the way through the winter. But when the leaves fall off the oleanders, they're no longer poisonous. Now you say, oh yeah, well, I've done a lot of research with a number of university agricultural departments, and they've all confirmed that once they're dry and off the plant, they are no longer poisonous, so you can use them in your compost. Now, what's another thing you can use here? We have a lot of pine trees here. So people say, okay, pine trees, pine needles make your soil acid. Well, again, do research like I did, and you'll find out that yes, they are acid, but once they come off the pine tree, fall on the ground, and the needles dry, they're neutral. So yes, you can use these in your compost. But let me warn you, because the pine needles are very dry and have a waxy coating, they take a long time to decompose. So be careful. I suggest not using more than 25% of pine needles in your compost. Or otherwise, instead of 6 months to compost, you're going to take a year, year and a half. So use them judiciously. So we're going to put them in the compost too. Now another thing you can use is sawdust. If you do a lot of woodworking around your home, sawdust and sawdust scraps can be used as compost. Now here's the thing, another caution. You want to be very careful not to use sawdust from treated lumber, plywood, masonite, particle boards, or any of that type of material, because they all contain a resin, a glue, or if it's, as far as treated wood is, it has another chemical in it that is toxic. So you don't want to put that in your compost. So make sure you do a research and see what you can put in your compost. I'm giving you just the basics. Also on the oleanders, everything on the oleander tree bush is poisonous. Now I use the leaves, and I've been using the leaves for 7 years. I do not suggest putting the cuttings, the green cuttings from your oleanders into your compost, because it's going to take a long time to break down and they have some toxin. So sawdust, oleander leaves, pine needles, all work well. Now another thing a lot of people save, eggshells, because your soil needs some calcium, and eggshells are very rich in calcium. So the best thing is the smaller the eggshell particles are, the faster they will decompose and work their way into the soil. Now, now this may sound a little weird, but dry your eggshells, and if you have an old coffee grinder you're not using anymore, put them in there and grind them to a powder. The finer the eggshells, the faster you're going to put calcium back in your soil. And your plants need calcium to make strong plant cells. Now, as we said, kitchen scraps. So we're going to use kitchen scraps. Now, I put all my kitchen scraps in a barrel, and then just put them in. Now, what kind of kitchen scraps? As you can see, I got lettuce, some old tomatoes, some cabbage. Now, make sure when you're getting your kitchen scraps, you do not want to put any meat scraps or bones. Now, they will break down. There's a bell pepper. They will break down, but the problem is they may attract pests that you don't want in your yard. So I keep it in a barrel. After I harvest one of the boxes, I start composting. Now, it'll take about 6 months for all of this to break down. So you may be asking yourself, what do I do for 6 months while this is breaking down? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to trench compost this, and then put the dirt back on top, and then we're going to plant on both sides of the trench. Now, you also want to put in the green material from your kitchen scraps and your yard waste, grass clippings and so forth. That's the green material, very high in nitrogen. But you also need some carbon. So you want to put in some brown, which is going to be leaves, as I said, leaves, and there's oleander leaves in here, there's pine needles, everything that I pulled out of the yard, and some rosemary leaves. So your mixture needs to be about 50-50. So what you're going to do is level this all out. Now, how are you going to get this to start breaking down? There's two ways. A lot of people say, oh, I need a compost starter. And yes, you can buy this commercially, a compost starter. But it's going to cost you between $7 to $12 for a little jar of compost starter. Save yourself some money. For $2 to $3, you can get a 1 cubic to a cubic and a foot and a half cubic foot bag of cow manure. Cow manure has all the microorganisms in it that you need to start breaking this down. So, right here is some cow manure. We're going to start putting some of that on here. Put a piece of paper in there so the cow manure didn't come through the holes in the bottom. So now we're ready to go. Everything that a compost bin needs is right here. So what do we do next? We just put the dirt back on top. Now, some of you may say, compost to break down really likes to be anaerobic, meaning air. So the more you turn it, the faster it will break down and the microorganisms will work. But we're doing anaerobic, which means no air or very little air. So instead of taking about 3 months, 4 months to turn the compost in a pile or a bin or a tumbler, we're going to take a little bit longer. But we're waiting for spring, which is going to be another 3-4 months away before we start planting again. So now we just put the dirt on top, pile it up. Now, if you take the dirt that you took out of the trench and put back in, you're going to find out that the trench is higher than what the rest of the dirt is. It's at a higher level. Well, not to be concerned, because as this material starts to break down, the pile, the trench is going to get back to level. So after we get all done putting the dirt back on top, we're going to level it off and water it down and let nature do its thing. It's that simple. I don't have to come out here and turn a compost bin every week, week and a half, 2 weeks. I don't have to do anything. I just need to keep it damp with a water hose and let nature do itself. And within 4 or 5 months, I come out here just before spring, turn the whole bed with a shovel or a garden fork, and I'm ready to plant my vegetables. Well, that's it from southern New Mexico, West Texas, Doug's Urban Garden. We look forward to another episode. In a few weeks, we're going to start planting tomatoes in 6-pack trays because we want to get a head start for spring. So January, we'll start planting tomatoes in 6-packs. We'll make you that video and show you how to get ready ahead, about 6 to 8 weeks ahead of the last frost, so you can have a huge tomato crop, just like we had here this fall at Doug's Urban Garden. So you all have a wonderful day, and remember, do things the urban way. Simple. Thank you.